Welcome to another episode of Around the 412. I'm Tyler, and with me, as always, is my co-host Smitty. Be sure to give us a follow on all of our social medias. Yeah, shout out to Prime as well, the unofficial official sponsor of Rocking Around the 412, Around the 412.
Maybe.
If they want to sponsor the fundraiser this year, that'll be great. But yeah, go follow us on our social medias, whether it's Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. We have one technically. But yeah, go give us a follow on all those, and then also go subscribe to us on YouTube. Posting a lot of shorts lately. Go give us a comment, a like. Let us know what you think of the videos. Let us know what you think of just what you want to see us post and stuff like that. And then before we jump into all the sports talk, because this week we got some juicy stuff to talk about. But let's talk about a couple of GoFundMes and a golf outing, actually. So the first GoFundMe is the one we've been talking about for the past several months. It's the Isla Keene's Future GoFundMe. It's supporting Isla Keene's future because tragically her father, as all of you I'm sure know by now, Dalton Keene passed away back in October after a Steeler game. But we're able to help out with the financial burden that was left behind because of that. And so we have the Isla Keene's future in all of the links to our show for the past several months. We're going to continue to put it in there for the indefinite future. And then speaking of Dalton, there's also the Dalton Keene. There's a golf outing for him in May. What is the exact date for that? May 3rd? Maybe I'm wrong.
May 13th.
May 13th.
So you had
May
the
13th,
three in
sorry.
there. Yeah.
Yeah. May 13th. It's at the Blackhawk Golf Course in Chippewa and Beaver County. And then all the proceeds to that are going to go to the Highmark Carrying Place. I believe that's correct, in Pittsburgh. So that's a golf outing to help support and
2 p.m. start time, by the way.
2 p.m. start time. Sorry, Smitty normally talks about this. This is
Yep.
my first time mentioning this. But yeah, so good way to remember Dalton Keene, and it's a great way to support another organization. And then the last one that we talked about is the one that we've talked about the last couple of weeks. We actually have a minor or big update, I guess, on that one. And sadly, we talked about in the LeMasters family. Amy LeMasters, the mom, had stage 4 breast cancer.
Yes.
And an update was actually posted to the GoFundMe that she actually passed away. And so
literally the same night that we recorded last week. So it was,
So Amy LeMasters passed away, but the GoFundMe is still going to be out there, and we are still going to support it. Because
it's at like $50,000 right now.
Yeah, and despite her passing away, the family is still going to have the financial burden that came with all that cancer can bring. So that can obviously we kind of like whenever Dalton passed away, we can't like give people the memories and the feeling of and we can't give them their mom back, but we can at least help out the family financially with all the medical bills and everything that came with what cancer can cause to a family. So that will also be listed in the description of the show as well. But yeah, now again, we have to make that awkward transition where we are going to talk about sports. And I mean, not that we're going to talk in a happy way, because we're going to talk about the Penguins first. And we have some news, I guess, breaking news right before we started doing the show, which I'm happy we didn't record. Like there was a hockey game yesterday, and we recorded yesterday because otherwise, we would have been a week late.
Yeah, I mean, from that aspect, from a content purpose, I'm definitely glad that, like, literally right before we pressed record, the team announced the trade was official. But I have a question for you before we get into this. Right. How do you feel having literally the worst GM in sports as the general manager of the Pittsburgh Penguins right now?
Worst GM in sports, that could very well.
It might be a bit of a reach, but
I don't know. You'd have to go through them. But yeah, it is a pretty bad feeling. And honestly, I kind of wish, looking at what now, and we haven't even talked about it, we haven't mentioned what it was, but looking at what has happened this evening, I almost wish that you were right last week, where the Fenway Sports Group's management was just like, you can't touch the team. Yep. You're going to be gone this offseason. Don't do anything. I would have rather have that have happened than what just unfolded.
Yeah, so the Pittsburgh Penguins acquired Mikael Granlund from the Nashville Predators for a second-round pick. A couple of years ago, probably 100% on board with this. Granlund, now 30 years old, makes $5 million each of the next 2 seasons as well.
31,
His
by the
numbers
way.
have continued to decline. 31, sorry, yeah, it's still listed him as 30 years old. He was 30 at the beginning of the season. That's why it says 30 on the
Yeah.
J-Fresh card. But I mean, look at these impacts. I'm pulling up for you guys here right now. Literally, the only thing that this guy can do is pass. Like he's a good passer of the puck, but the problem with that is like, okay, I could even live with that if like the bottom 6 was filled with wingers and you're just looking for a center, like from that aspect. No, he would have to be the play driver for the bottom 6. That's basically how they are viewing this, and he absolutely is not going to do that. I mean, for Ron Hextall to start to undo some of the bad that he had created within the last couple of, days, you get the blessing of Kapanen being claimed on waivers by the Blues. You get McGinn, through waivers and clear some space there. You trade Teddy Bluger. You cleared out some space to be able to make a move. Why is this the move that you're doing when you see, I mean, I don't want to say 100% that the Penguins could have gotten Jacob Chikrin, but you look at what Ottawa gave up for him, and how are the Penguins not winning that? How are they not willing to give up that? Because that is not even close to what the rumored ask was, and why all these teams were bidding out or bowing out, I should say.
Yeah. The fact that this is the move that we were kind of building towards, and honestly, no Penguin fan knew what that was going to be leading. We saw the moves, like we saw people getting placed on waivers, Kapanen getting claimed on waivers. They just traded Teddy Bluger. That's like also very fresh as of like an hour ago. But we saw these moves being putting into place, and we knew something was coming because we kind of questioned whether Hextall was going to do anything or not. But obviously, he wouldn't be doing these things if there wasn't going to be a move. And for it to be this move, as opposed to bringing in someone like Jacob Chikrin, who is the one that I thought the Penguins are going to get. I said that on a show, I think, a couple weeks ago. Clearly, that didn't happen. He's on his way to Ottawa.
Great move for them, by the way.
Yeah, I think it's really good for them. And it's this one is potentially, at least very, very seemingly so, really bad for the Penguins, not just for this season, but for the future, because all the relief you got from the cap space situation by the moves that Ron Hextall was doing is instantly gone. Instantly. And they're also gone for the next 2 seasons. Now, there are going to be some people coming off the books over the next season and in the second season after that to have cap space. Like, I looked at their cap space situation for next year, and they're still projected, even with Granlund on the books, to have about $19.3 million in cap space, just because you have guys like Zucker and Jari and Dumoulin coming off the books. But still, you are alleviating even more cap space, and you're filling it with Mikael Granlund. I mean, do
you want to become real sad?
What? Oh yeah, sure, okay.
Mikael Granlund and Sidney Crosby have the same amount of contract left with the Pittsburgh Penguins.
Sid only has 2 years left. That's crazy.
Yep.
I remember when that contract seemed like forever. That means we're 10 years into that contract, actually. But this contract is just, I mean, the trade itself, like, second round pick, who cares? But why are you doing it for him? I would rather have thrown in more for someone better. That's the problem. And you're alleviating the cap space situation for this guy who has not played at a really productive level in a couple of years. I mean, you just showed the graphic of his J-Fresh cards for his statistics, his like analytics, and it's not good on any sense of the level. I think that the only hope that you can have, and this is a false hope, I guess. The only hope that a Penguin fan can have is that in Nashville, he was playing on the top line, and so he was probably going against at least the best players every night that they played. So maybe in the lower level, he can play a little bit better, but still, it is not good to again, look at that card, look at the play, look at the production that he has, and that's what we're trading for. Like, and now the Penguins have. Hold on, I have Cap Friendly up right now. The Penguins are back to $260,000 for cap space. So you're telling me that's our move? Like that's it? We're not even looking forward to anything on Friday now. when the trade
Yeah,
deadline comes.
no money retained, by the way.
We have
on
nothing.
Granlund.
There's nothing. There's nothing to look forward to unless we make I don't want to say like a blockbuster trade, but like we are trading like NHL level guys to get more cap off the books and make an NHL trade. Outside of that, what's going to happen? This is our move. This sucks.
Based off what Hextall's done, I'm like fully expecting Marcus Pettersson to get moved and ending up with like Brock Besser.
Dude, this is okay. Well, I mean, don't get me wrong. I would love to bring in Brock Besser, but not at the expense of Marcus Pettersson, because Marcus Pettersson is one of your only productive defensemen that you have currently. So I would not be willing to do that. I mean, for the season, he's been your best defenseman. Let's be honest.
Yeah, right. I get that Besser is intriguing because of what he did in 2017, 18, and 18, 19. But to me, with what he's done the last few seasons, that's why he should be a buy low candidate. Like, especially on that contract. Like, yeah, you shouldn't be moving like an NHL legit asset like Marcus Pettersson is to get a guy like that. But man, I just have a bad feeling if there is another move coming from Ron Hextall, it involves Marcus Pettersson going out.
I mean, honestly, and you might disagree, and this might seem crazy, but just thinking about it and just a gut reaction right now, I would have rather them make a dumb trade for JT Miller than get Michael Granlund.
Oh yeah, because I mean that's a good player on a bad contract. Granlund is a bad player on a bad contract.
Yeah. Now, granted, the JT Miller goes several years after the Granlund contract is up, but still, for what realm of a sense of a window that you had now, at least JT Miller would be a good player within that window. Michael Granlund, like you said before we even started recording, there's a good chance that window is slammed shut now, because
I mean,
and you're trading for what seems to be a bad player. Doesn't really. I don't know how does this improve you? That's the thing that I would want Ron Hextall to explain to me is like, okay, how is this improving upon McGinn and Kapanen and Bluger, and like these guys collectively, what they were doing? How is Michael Granlund or Mikael Granlund or however you say his name making you better as a hockey team by getting rid of those guys? I just don't understand it.
Right. Like, I don't want to keep piling on this guy, like the player, because he didn't trade for himself. It's not his fault. It's just insane to me that this is what's coming the other way. This is the big move that Hextall was clearing out cap space for, and you don't get money retained on it. This is a $5 million player. Are you kidding me? And what's the expectation for where he's going to play too? Is he playing in the top 6 on the wing, or is he playing 3C, or is he playing on Carter's wing? I mean, regardless, him and Carter are going to be oil and water together. That line is going to be terrible. It's going to be worse than it was somehow when it was Carter captaining him again. Danton Heinen is going to have a hell of a time on that line.
I would guess that this top 6 is going to stay the exact same, and then he's going to slot into
great. So we're going to have a $5 million third line player that's doing absolutely nothing, not killing penalties.
That's the thing. It's like you look at the top 6. Who's he replosing?
Nobody.
I don't really.
Yeah.
Nope. And so
I mean, unless Hextall wants to trade Zucker too or something. Friday.
Who's actually productive this year? He has to go on that third line, and that's the problem. Is like, so he can either play third line center or he can go on the wing, and I guess Carter can still play center. Whatever they decide to do there, it's going to be those two and Heinen. And then the bottom one, also Kagula. How do you pronounce his name? Got called up.
Drake
Caggiula. Yep. Man, I was way off. Drake Caggiula. I'm sorry to your family. I mispronounced that name so bad. I butchered it. He got called up, so he's going to be in the bottom 6 because what's his face? Friend of the show, Brock McGinn, got sent down. Teddy Bluger got traded. And we have Ryan Poehling, Josh Archibald, and Drake Caggiula apparently to play. He's going to play fourth line center, I think. Or no, Ryan Poehling's not even back yet. What?
If Ryan Poehling's able to play tomorrow, he would be the one taking the spot. But if he's not able to go, Drake Caggiula will play. If Poehling is able to go, Caggiula will serve as the healthy scratch forward.
I just feel like they took a bad situation and made it worse.
Yeah, I mean, I had really kind of talked myself into Chychrun being what they were going to do. I thought maybe Sullivan kind of was going to get his way, had kind of talked Hextall into it. like the Kapanen domino falling started to make me feel that way. And then with McGinn and Friedman, I was like, oh, if they're able to, I don't want to move Marcus Pettersson, but if they were going to do it, the only way that I could stomach it is if in a separate deal, Chikrin's coming back. Like, okay, then I get it. And I had started to talk myself into the case being, oh, okay, what this is going to end up being is a package deal with Chikrin and a forward coming from the Coyotes. I don't know why my mind ever gave Hextall that much credit, but yeah, I mean, Mikael Granlund actually makes a lot more sense when you think about Hextall's history. But the thing is, too, that I will say is for as bad as he's been with like player evaluation and free agency and like within the season transactions, like he's been okay at the deadline with the Pens up to this point. You know, Rickard Rakell was a really nice get last year, and Jeff Carter extension be damned. That was a good move at the deadline when they acquired him. It obviously panned out well. So I thought Hextall had done pretty well at the deadline. And then this happens. So yeah, like it's a huge statement to say acquiring this one player is slamming the window shut. But again, when you're talking about a $5 million player that has his impacts on both ends of the ice, that is taking up their salary cap and their ability to improve the roster this season and 2 seasons from now, like in the future. I mean, I don't know. I don't think that's that ridiculous of a statement, to be honest.
Sorry, I'm counting forwards. 7 of the 12 forwards make over 5 million or more now.
Yeah.
I don't know what every other team looks like in terms of that, but we now have a $5 million third liner.
So, I mean, if you get 50% retained on this, I still don't love it, but I think it's palatable. Like the fact that they're paying him this full $5 million.
If he was a rental, like if it was just 1 year, then whatever. Like that, I still wouldn't like the trade. I still don't think it makes you better. But I could swallow like, okay, you just have him for this year, then he's gone. But he's got 2 more years after this year. That's the thing that is the killer for me. Forget this year. I don't even care about this year anymore. I'm looking at the future of the Penguins, and this guy is still going to be on your team. Now, granted, like you said, I don't want to keep harping on him because it's like it's not his fault that he's a Penguin now. Like obviously, Hextall is the one that brought him in.
Yeah,
we're rooting for him. I want him to be good, so I'm hoping I'm right that being in the not as elevated role and being on like a third line could help him out and possibly make his play better. But Hextall's decision making is so bad. Like, why do you not cough up more for a guy like Chikrin? I don't understand the thought process, especially when you look at like what other teams have been getting in some of their returns for players. A second got you Mikael Granlund. Like that's.
I mean, I was going to say, listen, same team, Nashville, also a second round pick, and making $1 million less. Give me Nino Niederreiter over Mikael Granlund.
Yeah, not only that is he actually plays good.
Yeah, well, and he was already traded too, by the way. So I'm just saying, like,
no,
second round pick. Yeah,
no, it makes absolutely no sense. I don't get it. From if Hextall is not fired this offseason, I'll be shocked.
But that and that's the thing is, if you're going to fire him, why did you just allow him to trade for a player that's under contract for $5 million the next 2 seasons? That's a great question, actually. I mean, I've seen people start to bring this up. In the back of my mind, I've been thinking about it. Does Fenway Sports Group even care about the Penguins? Or are they just like an asset for them to make some money? Because like it doesn't seem like they don't even have the Penguins in their, and this is like a minute thing, I guess, but like their header on Twitter and like their social media profiles, like no mention of the Penguins whatsoever. Like I feel like it's just an asset.
Just
that they
Liverpool
own.
and the Red Sox?
Yeah, I believe so.
I mean, maybe they just haven't updated it since they bought the Penguins. It's still only been like a year.
Their spokesperson like hasn't said anything about the team. Like, do they even know what's going on? I mean, they're in for a hell of a wake up call in like 5 years when they find out that Hextall traded for Mikael Granlund.
In 5 years when they find out.
Yeah.
Three years after he's gone off the team and his contract's expired, they're gonna
be like,
out.
Wait, what happened? Did we ever win a Stanley Cup with the Penguins once we bought them? Let's go back through and look. And they're going to be in for a wake-up call when they see what happened here.
Yeah, I mean, maybe that is the case. Like, they don't really care what happens.
I mean, I hate it. I didn't like it's hard to be excited, honestly, like about this team since Fenway Sports Group took over. And at the time, it was like I was kind of excited about it because of like the amount of cash flow. I was like, man, like they're going to be able to improve facilities. I think like obviously you have a salary cap that everybody has to adhere to, but in the form of
Yeah.
like upfront cash, like who's really going to be able to compete with them? And I don't like I haven't been happy with the way that the team has been managed since they took over.
Yeah, and it's not even like Mario has as much influence as he had
They're
before.
not
Like
they're not hands
he's
on.
still
I guess that's my
yeah,
gripe.
like yeah, that is an issue because I mean we knew that the prior ownership cared because Mario was a majority owner. Like we knew that he cared about the team and was going to do everything that he can to help the team win. We don't really know that about Fenway Sports Group. Mario is still a minority owner, but he's not a majority owner. He doesn't have as much influence as he had before.
Has he been to a game
So
this year?
uh, who knows? Who
Yeah, I'm not
knows?
sure.
I wouldn't want to go to a game this year. Let's be honest.
I'm just
But
asking. Like I'm not like trying to like talk poorly about him in any means.
yeah,
Like in this case, I was just curious. Like
no. Fenway Sports Group took away his season tickets.
Okay,
But
yeah, maybe it makes sense
here's
to
another
pay.
question that I've seen like people floating around, not necessarily just about this trade, but just prior to, like during the past week or so, like how much influence on this trade and just in moves in general that the Penguins have done, like do you think Brian Burke has on this situation as too? So like in this Mikael Granlund trade, how much influence do you think Brian Burke had on that trade, not just Ron Hextall?
That's a good question. I mean, I don't know that we're gonna know. To me, Granlund seems like more of just a Hextall guy as opposed to a Hextall and Burke guy. If it was both of them, I think like we're looking at like JVR being a Penguin right now, something like that. Which, by the way, I would have preferred if it was James Van Riemsdyk. But I think that he would probably, fit that. What's that? Truculence that Brian Burke likes to throw around. Granlund doesn't seem like a Brian Burke type of player to me personally, but I don't know. I mean, could be. He could definitely be influencing things there. I could tell you one thing. Mike Sullivan obviously isn't getting much of a say in things.
Yeah, no. I don't think so at all. And I think he's probably gonna he probably got the update on Twitter too, just like the rest of us. And he's like,
He's got post notifications
he's like,
on.
what is this?
Yeah,
Like,
maybe.
like
But
last
also,
week when he said my roster is the roster is the roster. He's gonna answer the same question tomorrow night after the game. The roster is still the roster. It just has a new dumbass on it.
Wait, hold on. So they're saying this. I'm sorry, like in real time as we're recording this, I'm also on Twitter just because, like, also to try to get away from the Pens for a second here, so I can like cool off a little bit. Do NHL GMs think that the trade deadline is like sooner than Friday? Like, why is there so much action the week? This seems a little bit abnormal. Like, there's always moves here and there, but like the last 72 hours have been like nonstop. Something's cooking.
I don't know. Maybe they think that other teams are interested, so they need to jump the gun on it. I wish that was the case. It's for somebody. Actually, nobody else was probably trading for Mikael Granlund. That's why we haven't heard his name. And of
Yeah.
course, the one that we haven't heard his name at all is the one that Ron Hextall was going to trade for. That's happened with Jeff Carter. That happened with Ricard Raquel. Of course, that's the way it happened.
Yeah. I wanted to mention too. I don't know what her last name is, so like I can't really give her a proper shout out, but I'm sure you've seen Shayna, who's with the Athletic. I know she's friends with Jesse, the blue hair. Yeah, she's been
Yeah.
like she's crushing it, by the way, really making a name for herself in the hockey world, which is awesome. But she put out there Pens add Granlund for 2+ years, which lines up with the Big Three's window. Following the pattern, another player whose deal fits that timeline is Brock Besser, whose cap hit matches Pedersen plus McGinn. Would expect Vancouver to recoup some sorely needed capital if they're able to make a deal. I didn't read that
I'd
before I
hate
said
it.
what I said earlier about Pedersen,
Yeah.
but I'm telling
I'd
you,
hate it.
I have.
I'd hate it. I'd hate it. I would hate it. And I know I keep repeating myself. I'd hate it, but that would suck. That would suck. You're trading away. And listen, like Chris Letang is your best defenseman, quote unquote. But like for this season, Marcus Pedersen has been your best defenseman. He's been your most consistent defenseman. So you're immediately getting rid of that guy. And don't get me wrong, I'd like to see what Brock Besser could do on the team, but you're seriously going to trade away what has been your best defenseman this season for that? No, thank you. Please no. Because then what is your defense going to look like? You already have a terrible bottom six. Don't make your defense any worse than it has to be.
Yep. Pettersson's, been their best defensive defenseman this year. I mean, I guess you look at it as a plus to get McGinn off the books, but that's, I don't know. I agree with your sentiment. I hate it. And just play that on a loop like 5 times.
I hate it. Also, speaking of the Penguins, we're talking about like trade scenarios and stuff like that. They have won games recently. Surprisingly enough, they have won some games, and
3.
It seems like all it took, at least at the time, was Kapanen to be claimed off waivers, and suddenly we won 3 games in a row. But they won against. I mean, they got killed against the Oilers last week. That was
the wake-up call.
Yeah, and then
not
Blues.
For Ron Hextall,
they were able to win in overtime thanks to Brian Rust. They had an amazing second half of a second period against the Tampa Bay Lightning, and then they were able to beat Mikael Granlund and Nashville last night, Tuesday night. So I wonder if he just hopped on the plane with them and be like, "Hey, we're trading."
That's 100%. That is 100% the first game that he's watched this year of Mikael Granlund.
It's like,
because I thought Granlund was actually one of their better players. I thought he was one of their better forwards last night. Hextall had no clue about the season he was having prior to that game, I don't think.
Yeah. Also, just talking about the three wins, it's nice to see them actually string together wins consistently again. Because I would say 3 wins, I would count that as a winning streak. And the last time they won 3 wins in a row was from December 10th through December 15th. So we're talking like 2.5 months ago. So it's been a rocky 2.5 months for the Penguins, but they've been able to string together 3 wins. So those are vital points that they've been able to make up. Like you said, that Oilers game, I mean, there's been a couple games this season where I'm like, that is the worst game of the season. That's one of them that I would look at and be like, that could be the worst game of the season. So yeah, that was probably a wake-up call.
But do you know what that game was?
Okay, what? I don't know.
This is gonna be
I don't know how to respond to that, but yeah.
But do you know how everybody is always like, do you think whoever the best college team is could beat whoever the worst team is in the NFL?
Oh, like could
Alabama
beat Cleveland?
Yeah, that game is how that game would look in football terms. but on ice.
Yeah, honestly.
Because they did not look like 2 teams in the same league.
What was the shots? I'm curious of that. Let's see. I'm just looking at this real quick, and I know this is probably not really entertaining.
And also, we never talked about college basketball in here, but Ron Hextall, I don't know if he got a hold of Pitt tonight or what, but dropping a game to Notre Dame at Notre Dame, who had 2 conference wins coming into tonight, right after Pitt gets ranked finally at number 25. I mean, bad time in Pittsburgh right now. Bad time.
Yeah. So the Penguins had 24 shots, and the Edmonton Oilers had 44. So that's always good.
Yeah, well, that's the thing is, so then the Pens come out the next game, and they almost had as many shots in the first period against St. Louis as they did in that game against Edmonton. So I don't know what the messaging was. I don't know. Oh, actually, you obviously, I think if people watch or listen to the show, they're going to know who Sarge is. I've at least brought him up one time. He used to do our YouTube videos. We talk about him every once in a while. He sent me a text today that I loved, and as I was about to talk about Kapanen, it reminded me of this. He said, well, actually, I want to read this word for word, so let me pull it up. He asked me a question, actually, and I want to see what you think.
Okay.
Who is better, the Steelers without Claypool or the Pens without Kapanen?
I mean, the Steelers still lost a game without Claypool. The Penguins haven't lost a game without Kapanen yet. So it's hard for me to say it's not the Penguins.
Okay, that's fair. Isn't it
now
weird,
there's another factor though. There's another variable because we added Mikael Granlund.
Yeah. Yep. But it is weird how like Kapanen exits, and obviously he's not the entire reason that the bottom six was playing the way that they were. But, Danton Heinen gets back into the lineup. All of a sudden, like that third line looked pretty good for a game. They've looked okay, I feel like, for a little bit now, the last few games.
Well, Danton
Obviously
Heinen,
didn't change.
He's one of the only people that can drive offense in the bottom six.
Yeah, even if he himself isn't scoring. Yeah, he actually is like a defensive presence. He's able to forecheck. He plays Sullivan's system pretty well. Underrated passer. He just hasn't found the back of the net this year the way he did last year, but he definitely makes his line mates better, unlike Mikael Granlund.
Yeah, but I mean, not really finding the back of net is kind of just the way it goes with the bottom six right now, except for the Tampa Bay game. I that's an anomaly. I don't know what happened. I think that the entire team just snorted a line of cocaine on the bench, and for 10 minutes, they just scored every 30 seconds, it seemed like.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, we got one more game before the trade deadline, and then after that, we will have probably Brock Besser on the team, and Marcus Pettersson will be a Canuck. So
that sucks. I hate it. I just listen.
I want the record.
The clip
to show.
is out now. While it hasn't happened yet, I hate it. I hate it. I don't know what else to say about it. I hate it.
I just wanted to. I want the record to show. I mentioned that before that tweet from Shayna popped up, and I read it on here. That all happened in real time. So if Pettersson gets moved and that was already kind of mentioned, but I honestly thought like there was no chance of that anymore with this Granlund stuff. Yeah, go out and get another overpriced forward who you're committed to for at least another season. That's great.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, let's have 8 of our 12 guys making over $5 million.
Oh man, yeah.
Also, this did nothing to help the Penguins like age situation, because you losing Kapanen, McGinn, and Friedman, despite how they played, whether they sent down waivers, despite how they're played, has nothing to do with this. Just the fact that the team just got older again by bringing in Granlund, who just turned 31 a couple days ago.
Yeah,
it's been a thing that people have talked about the past couple of years with the Penguins. I mean, the core is old, but at least like Crosby and Malkin are still productive. When the rest of the team is that old, if you're not productive, then you're just slowing them down.
Yeah. I mean, Carter's making that age jump up quite a bit for nothing. Nice goal on Tuesday, though. Congrats on that, but
Congrats on that.
Or wait, no, it wouldn't have been. It was Sunday.
That was Tampa.
Yeah, Sunday. All right, we gotta stop talking about this, but yeah, that's gonna be an entire separate clip of this show. Us talking about the Granlund trade and stuff. So while you're liking this video and stuff like that, go like that video. I'll make that the one that it pops up at the end of the show anyway. But all right, let's move on and talk about the Steelers. I want to say one thing that I've already loved about Omar Khan, just from like a content perspective. He is so much more open when talking about things than Kevin Colbert was. I don't know if you caught like any of his snippets from the combine or anything like that, but very open with the fact that like they would love to get a deal done with Alex Highsmith this offseason. Like that's a priority. Cam Sutton, they've already been negotiating with him. He talked about the, desire potentially, like in an ideal scenario, they'd love to be able to move down from 32 or something and get more draft picks. Because even though they have 4 in the top 80 or something like that, they only have 2 or 3 picks, I think, on day 3. So yeah, they probably in an ideal situation at some point in the draft aren't sticking with all those picks and are able to get a couple more down the board. I'm trying to think of what else. Like willingness to spend in free agency. They're not going to spare any expense. He feels like they have the space. They have their quarterback on a rookie deal, which he said is very important, which like we all know we talk about it. But yeah, like I just enjoy hearing him speak with so much openness because it's just like totally different night and day from Kevin Colbert. It's the opposite of what we've seen with the Penguins GM tenures, the last two. Rutherford from being as open as he was to Hextall, complete opposite with the Steelers.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, no, I mean, he must have listened to our shows recently because
I think so.
I mean,
Yeah, I think they play
high,
them at the facility.
they probably do. That's a good workout music because it really just probably pisses everybody off listening to it. So it gets them in this right mood, right mindset to work out too. But no, I mean, we talked about Alex Highsmith just last week. How we thought if you're going to get an extension done, you better start talking about it now with him because you don't really have a lot of depth at the edge position behind him, and you kind of had to address that now before you're reaching next year, and he's going to be a free agent. And then with like Cam Sutton, we both said that is your number one priority in terms of like free agents currently on your team, and I'm happy that they're trying to get something done there. I think that the openness from Khan is great. Also, he said that Andy Weidel is going to be the one making the draft board for the Steelers, and then after that's going to be their draft board, which is interesting. In the past, it really seems like some of the assistant GMs probably had some input, but at the end of the day, Kevin Colbert was still the one making the draft board and making the sole draft decisions. But but Omar Khan is putting some trust in some other guys, it seems.
I think it's because Andy Weidel coming from Philly, where he built that. And has been given a ton of credit for doing that. Like he comes from that side. Omar, which is the same with Kevin Colbert. Omar being more of like the cap guy, free agent contract negotiations, contract extension talks. Like that's kind of his forte, his area of expertise. He's still probably kind of learning the player evaluation aspect, at least from like the top level. Obviously he's been in those conversations, but not as the GM. So I really like, some people might be like, oh, why is the GM, kind of like delegating that responsibility? That seems like a huge thing. I think that's, him recognizing strengths within the organization. So I have no issue with him, letting Andy Weidel handle that aspect of the draft.
Yeah, I don't either. That's why I think that the fact that he's like just basically coming out and saying it too. He's not even trying to play like he's the one making the draft board. He's just like, listen, he's making our draft board for us. I think it's kind of like a breath of fresh air going into this off season, kind of knowing that the GM has the right interest for the team, and he's willing to just really express that, hey, this is what we're doing. And obviously, selfishly, as Steeler fans, we like what he has to say so far.
Yeah, and I mean, the transparency has kind of always been there, whether it's been in words or with actions, in terms of where you feel like the Steelers are going to go in the draft. I mean, especially the last two seasons, we knew it was going to be running back, we knew it was going to be Najee, and we knew it was going to be a quarterback. Maybe a little bit thrown off by the whole Malik Willis, Desmond.
A little bit. Let's just play. It wasn't a little bit. When we're talking about NFL drafts, we're talking about Steeler drafts. That is the biggest smokescreen of all time with the Steelers.
Yeah, they don't hide. They don't hide their interest. They don't hide their interest in the position.
Yeah,
but they definitely threw us off the scent of who was their guy last year. Which, by the way, if I would have listened to a single text that I got from somebody, they literally said it was going to be Kenny Pickett or not quarterback. I didn't put my faith in that text, but I should have. But anyways, what I was getting at there is hearing Khan talk about the position groups this year, looking at what they were, so keen on, whether it was at the Shrine Bowl, the Senior Bowl. It's going to be very interesting in terms of like the pro day stuff. We know how important that is for the Steelers. But I really have a feeling like get ready to see a lot of trenches in this draft class from the Steelers, because that's definitely what it seems like they've had their eyes on.
Yeah, and I liked your tweet this morning. Obviously, it's a tough situation, but I liked your tweet that you really think that everybody in the top 16 should pass on Jalen Carter.
Yeah, that's a very unique situation. And it's like, man, of course, like right now at this time, this is getting out there. And I'm not like, obviously, I don't know the situation. So to speak on it one way or another, I would never do that. Yeah, like as a joke, I said, 16 teams should pass on him. Then obviously 17. But yeah, I'm really curious as to how that's going to play out. And like, he's going to have to answer a lot of questions about it. We thought that might be today's of the time of recording this. Then he wasn't available to the media. He had already met with teams the previous day, so he wasn't there. But yeah, I mean, there's going to be teams that like probably aren't going to want to touch him.
Yeah, and this is a guy that like, if this guy was taken number 1 overall, like obviously for how heavy quarterback you're expecting to be in the top pick, it would be a little bit surprising, but I wouldn't question it whatsoever.
Well, yeah, if Chicago were sticking and picking and not trying to move back for one of these QB needy teams, it's Will Anderson and Jalen Carter, and I lean Jalen Carter. Just talking about the player.
Yeah. So that's a tough situation. But I just like that tweet this morning. It was pretty funny. It was a good joke.
Did you see some of the responses?
No.
They were like, "Oh, the Raiders might actually trade up to try to get him," or like the perfect fit for the Browns.
So people took it seriously.
Yeah, I mean, I think they were like kind of calling him a criminal, which again, like, man, we don't even know anything about the situation. Like, you're really taking a leap there. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. I don't, we're not in those conversations with teams, but I have a hard time believing at least like 1 or 2 teams are going to be like, man, we don't even like, just knowing how the NFL works, there's going to be a couple teams that are like, we're not even going to touch this guy.
I mean,
now whether those are teams that are like even in striking distance of him, I don't know.
But I'm just going to say, like, and maybe I'm way off. I would think the Steelers, if they were in that position, are probably one of them.
Maybe. Yeah. I mean, we've seen them handle situations and stick by guys once they're already in the organization. But like to draft a guy already, like knowing that and then bringing him in, yeah, that's a different case. So I don't know. I mean, yeah, that's something to monitor, and I guess we can talk about it more when information comes out. But
yeah, I guess
that's
also
a top 3 player that might not go top 3 now.
Yeah. While we're talking about like the GM and everything, still, you mentioned that like the possibility of like openness to trade back. Like, in what scenario? Like, I guess who would have to be off the board for you personally to trade back? And do you actually believe that like Omar Khan would trade back? Because no matter how much people talked about like, oh, the Steelers should trade back in this scenario in prior drafts, it wasn't going to happen. The Steelers don't do that. They were just going to take best player available if they want it, or a player that they liked at a certain position. Like that was just not Kevin Colbert's forte with trading back. Potentially trade. I mean, they traded up for Devin Bush, which was really surprising when it happened, but trading back was almost just unheard of, was never going to happen, completely brushed off. Do you think Omar Khan is different with that? Like, could it actually be a possibility with him, and it could be actual openness to it? And then for you personally, like, who would have to all be gone for you to actually want to trade back in that scenario?
I do think he's going to be more open to it for a lot of the reasons that we talked about, in terms of like he's talking so openly about everything else. Don't know why he would, be non-genuine while talking about that. Like, if he's saying it, I have every reason to believe that that would be the case, that he's willing to move. Even though the Steelers haven't done that in the past, I think that he would be willing to change the Steelers' guard and do things his own way. Another thing is like Andy Weidl, who he's obviously got as his right-hand man and is taking charge of this draft board. Philly moves as much as anybody. The last year that Andy Weidl was there, they moved, I think it was like they had their hands on 25 different draft picks before the like 5 or 6 they ended up making. So they're constantly moving up and down the board. And being part of that process, I think, bringing that influence over. I do think that Omar Khan could get, and that's in both ways. Like, I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility, whether that's this class or in future years, that like he'd be willing to jump up for a player too. But I think this year specifically, I wouldn't be looking at 17. I think 32 is probably the one where I would be looking at them to move back at. But for me personally, who would have to be off the board? So the tackle class is interesting for me because I think that it's a good group, but there's not a like number one, like surefire, this guy is the number one left tackle in this class. It seems like it's like a lot of flavor. It's like Broderick Jones probably has the highest ceiling. Paris Johnson's the best right now. Peter Skoronski's got like the shorter arms. Do we even know if he's going to play tackle at the NFL level? Some people like Anton Harrison out of Oklahoma. So for me, if Me personally, I'm not even in love with Skoronsky at 17. If Paris Johnson, Broderick Jones, Christian Gonzalez, Devin Witherspoon, and you know what? Like, not a lot of people are talking about him. I at one point wouldn't have even considered him for 17 because I thought he'd be long gone. But with the injuries and the lack of production the last year or so, he might be within striking distance. Brian Brzee is very intriguing to me at 17.
From Clemson.
Yeah. So he would be another one that I would be kind of looking at. But yeah, to me, like, I'm not even, it might be a little bit of a hot take. I don't love Joey Porter Jr. Like, if he was there at 17, he's not somebody that I would be like upset if they traded out of and didn't take. So there's probably like 4 or 5 guys in the entire class where if they were there at 17, I'm like, yes, make the pick, because I would be all about trading back and trying to get more capital.
So it sounds like tackle and corner outside of Brian Brzee are the only options.
Oh, I mean, I don't know that they would do it. Brian Branch is my favorite player in the class overall. But I was just thinking of like the way I don't know that he's going to really be on the Steelers' radar so much. He's listed as a safety, but he does everything. He played that star position at Alabama, which is Minkah Fitzpatrick. Like, he was basically that version, this year's version of Minkah. I think he's going to move all around at the next level. If you don't use him that way, I think you're not using him the right way. I just don't know that the Steelers are going to be interested necessarily, but I think they should be. I mean, especially if you lose KZ and or Edmonds, whichever one it is, I think you're going to have a spot where you could play this guy. So slot corner, he could play there. I mean, so many different ways to use him. He would be another guy that I would be, take him at 17.
Yeah. It'd just be so, like, I'm open to it, but it'd just be so weird, even at 32, to see the Steelers trade back, just because that's just hasn't happened.
They have that gap though between, I think it's after their own second pick at 49, they don't pick again until 80. So they probably would like to accumulate another pick, like, to shorten that amount of time. That's my thinking, is they want to move back at 32 or 49 to have a pick, closer within that range. Me personally, again, they only have like 2 or 3 picks or something like that it's probably 3 on day 3. So that's more likely. I think they probably want to get some more picks in like the 4th and 5th, but
yeah, I mean, maybe. And 32 this year, I mean, 32 is normally a first round pick, but since it's a second round pick this year, they're kind of in that area of like, if we don't like some guys here, they could trade back.
You know what the NFL should have given them, because it's the 32nd pick. They should have given them a 5th-year option on that pick as well, even though it's a second rounder.
That's true. That's true. I'm going to use a term that was used. When was this? 2021 draft by our friend Nate Williamson. This class at a lot of positions is deep mid.
Yes. Yep.
Like,
well,
there's quite a bit of players that like can play, but they're all like pretty mid. There's not like a lot of like the take off the top at each position.
Well, to me, I think the corners, I love the corner class and I love the edge class. I think the tackle is super deep mid. I think the wide receiver class is super deep mid. There's a good amount of like linebackers that there's like 4 or 5 that I think are going to be able to be like plug in, like they could play in the NFL right now and be like 3 down starters. But there's a lot of guys that I think can contribute and be on the field at some point. I don't know. I mean, the quarterbacks, like, I guess it depends on how you feel about Levis and Richardson. I really like Richardson. Levis is okay.
Richardson has one of the, and it was on a 2-point conversion, I'm pretty sure, in the Utah game last season, has one of the most entertaining plays I've ever seen, or like the most pleasing plays I've ever seen. It is a 2-point conversion where he does a spin move to juke a defender and throws the 2-point conversion. It is one of the most appealing plays to the eye that I've ever seen watching football.
Have you been monitoring like the odds at all on the NFL draft? Like, he's the favorite now to be the first quarterback off the board.
Really?
Yeah.
Like even over like Young and Stroud.
Mm-hmm. There's going to be teams that do not like Young because of his size. Not so much the height, but the weight. Like taking NFL hits.
Yeah.
And Stroud, I think some people are just going to be questioning, like, is that Georgia game a one-game anomaly, or is that a better indication of the player that he can be? Because he didn't show that all year until that game.
And I mean, I don't know how much NFL GMs do it, but a lot of people always bring it up. He's an Ohio State quarterback, so
I hope not at all, because I hate that so much. I mean, if you go through the NFL and look at where guys went to school, it's like, how many schools can you even consider have like a rich tradition at quarterback? I mean, it's not like, oh, Josh Allen came out of Wyoming. That's, known place where quarterbacks are just successful from. How many other, quarterbacks out of Texas Tech, even with Patrick Mahomes? Because like Big 12 quarterbacks, like that was always a criticism, like playing in those air raid offenses where offense just comes so easy. Transition to the NFL is hard because they don't play NFL style defenses anywhere in that conference.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know, but anyways, don't even know how we got to that point, but yeah, pick 17 for the Steelers. We will see how it goes. All right. Well, that is it for the Steelers portion, unless you got anything else.
No, I don't.
Okay. And last thing to talk about, just a little bit of Pirates stuff. Spring training underway. Pirates are scoring a ton of runs this spring. They're also giving up a ton of runs this spring, just like any other spring training. I think I got a text about, I think it was during their first spring training game. It was like, how do you feel about this game? My answer to any spring training game is going to be, don't care about the result. Really just watching certain players. And with pitchers, especially, it is tough because we don't know what the game plan was going into that spring training game. It could be something like I really didn't know this until we've had some guys on here to talk about it. But it's like their game plan going into a spring training game might just be, let's see what the fastball looks like today. And they're throwing all fastballs. I mean, chances are they're going to get lit up results wise in the game, but they're trying to, see where their velocity is at that point, trying to ramp up the arm. There's so many different things that go into it. So I don't think that's what, like, you can't look at the results of it, but there's obviously certain guys that you want to see stuff from. And my question to you, and it kind of plays off of this, is, do you have a guy this year, whether that's like at the major league level right now or like on the cusp of the majors, that you think is like the breakout candidate for the Pirates this season? Obviously, like there's a pretty obvious answer lying there, and a guy in O'Neal Cruz at short.
I was going to say, does he count?
I mean, yeah, I would think so, because like he didn't, he can still win Rookie of the Year this year, right?
Yeah, he can.
So, I mean, yeah, he didn't, qualify with the service time last year. So,
yeah, I mean, I might steal yours, but Mike Burrows.
No, that's not mine, actually.
Okay, he's probably one that I think that could make his come up and like be a consistent player at the MLB level this year. He really tore it up last year. You had him on the show when I was absent. But he's a guy that I think could really add a good arm to that pitching group, which last year, I mean, we thought that at least one part of the pitching, like whether it was going to be bullpen or starters, we thought it was going to be bullpen. We thought that could be more of a strength than the starters were going to be. Turned out to be the opposite, but whether he ended up being a bullpen arm or what they decided to use him, I think that could be a guy that could give a good arm at the MLB level, and maybe a reliable arm. I should phrase it that way, because a lot of the arms that we've had over the past several seasons, they've had a good inning or two, but they haven't been able to rely on them consistently. So I think that's somebody that could do that. And then obviously I'm going to just throw in like O'Neal Cruz, obviously, because obviously, I mean, that's like the real answer, but it's like, okay, besides him, which one are we picking? And also, I won't say necessarily breakout star, but I think having a player who, whether he can play at first base or if they do him as DH, like G-Man Choi, like I think having a guy like him could be good for the team, because getting production from a first baseman has been pretty bad for the Pirates this past several seasons. So I think that's somebody that could bring some good consistency, especially with the bat this season.
Part of me wanted to go Jack Sawinski just because it looks like he could be playing center field and Reynolds in left. And I think just from like a defensive positional value, like that's a huge thing for him. Also like the underlying stuff, only 3 hitters were greater than 70th percentile in barrel percentage, max exit velocity, chase percentage, sprint speed in 2022. It's Mike Trout, Matt Chapman, and Jack Sawinski. So, I mean, this guy kind of like, even though he wasn't good against lefties, obviously, even like just away from PNC Park in general, wasn't very good. It seems like a lot of people think like he could put it all together this year, but that's not my pick. I spent so much time talking about a guy that isn't my pick. My pick is going to be Rodolfo Castro. And I said it would tie in because of that, obviously, grand slam in the first spring training game. I expect to see a lot of those this year. He's actually a popular pick amongst like people that cover the team to be their breakout guy this year. I think he ends up, pretty early in the season, completely taking away that second base job. Like there's some talks like they're going to be using a couple different guys. They're like, Ji-Wan Bay could be there a little bit. They brought in Connor Joe, who can play some second base. Like there's guys that could play there. I don't even think it's a conversation relatively early in the season that Rodolfo Castro is going to be the everyday guy. Obviously switch hitter. We've seen pop from both sides of the plate. I think that you need to see him probably get on base at a little bit higher of a clip. Plays pretty solid defense. He even can give you something at third base. We saw that at times last year, spelling T. Bryan. So, yeah, I mean, for me, I'm going with Rodolfo Castro, who I think is going to provide a little bit of everything for this team. All 2014-ish Jay Hay.
Okay. If we got 2014 Josh Harrison, I would be okay with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and like I said, I was talking to Alex Stumpf about him, and he thinks like that this is going to be a big year for him as well. And imagine if that's the case. If you get what you think you're going to get from O'Neill, Brian Reynolds has been a consistent player. You look up and down this lineup. If they get a strong year from Rodolfo Castro, I'm by no means saying that he moves the needle to them all of a sudden being like a playoff team, but I think that you are having like a different conversation about them. Not just for next year, because I think then you start talking about like, oh, wow, like, is this guy part of, this core that we think is going to be the group that makes the playoffs?
Yeah, that could very well be the case.
But I like your pick too. Obviously, love Mike. I keep saying it, but I would love to get him on here. I don't know if he's going to have the time during spring training or.
Well, maybe that's just a hope too. But I just think that pitcher, I mean, whether it's a relief pitcher or a starting pitcher, is very vital to the Pirates right now. That was very much a weakness to the team when you watched them last year.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you need in like Oviedo, again, like spring training results are what they are. He did not look good in his first spring training action. And like Vince Velasquez not going to have a long leash to me as that 5th starter, assuming that he wins that job. A lot of talk about like, could JT Brubaker be like one of the trade pieces that this team has, whether it's now or at the deadline? That's kind of been talked about already in the past. To me personally, man, I would love to see, I think he'd be better suited in the bullpen, or at least like being used with an opener or something. You look at the numbers, it's like, and this is for a lot of pitchers, but like drastically with him, first time through the order, really good. A little bit of a drop off second time. Third time through the order, I'm getting a hit off of him. So like it really drops off for JT Brubaker.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think there's going to be a spot for Mike Burrows in this rotation sooner rather than later. And, I'm not wishing poorly on anybody in that rotation right now. But would be really cool to see Mike in the majors this season, whenever that be.
Yeah.
And we've seen the past, like you're not going to have the same 5 guys anyway. Like they're going to need 7, 8 at least starting arms
over a season. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think he does get a shot for sure at some point. And if he makes, the most of it, no reason to send him back. So
agreed.
But all right, I think that about does it. Some good, some bad, some Ron Hextall on this episode. The
I
links
still
to
hate
those,
it, by the way. 40 minutes later, I still hate it.
We'll see how much you hate it come Friday. But the links to those GoFundMes will be in the description of the show wherever you are watching or listening. That's the Isla Keen Fund as well as the LeMasters Family Fund. Also some information about the golf outing we are putting together for Dalton Keene, which is going to be on May 13th at 2 p.m. at the Blackhawk Golf Course. and really excited about that. You do not have to worry. I will not be swinging any golf clubs that day. However, I will be in attendance. There's going to be a lot of like door prizes and stuff like that. Some of them provided by us, as well as like talking with his best friend Todd. They're going to have some other stuff too, some baskets put together and stuff like that. So should be a good time, obviously, for a great cause. If you want to, get a group of guys together, group of girls together, whatever it might be, come out and have a good time with us. Reach out to me for more information. Other than that, like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, leave us a 5-star review, all that stuff on any of our platforms. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, like us on Facebook, like us or follow us on TikTok. Check out the YouTube shorts,
where we're
TikToks, everywhere. And we will catch you next time. For Smitty, for Tyler, bye-bye.